I've been asked how I made these bags, and I thought I might try to explain that. Unfortunately, I didn't video the whole process, but I did take pictures of most of it, so I thought I might try to walk through it. I also wrote down and took a photo of the size of the cuts and panels and things that I used, so you can screenshot that after. But with this, so I started cutting out all of my panels, my binding, my hardware and webbing all at once, so it's just easier to have in front of you. But when I do the quilted outside panels, I use a double layer of batting, a lot of times just scrap batting, what I have on hand, to fill it with, rather than using anything special or specific. But I start off with attaching all of my hardware. This includes my handles, my D-rings, webbing, all of those things. My top flap, I connect to the center of the back panel. Then I use that to guide where my top handles, my 20-inch handles will go, and I just do them on the side of the top flap and then match that to the front panel. Just pin them down. I connected my D-rings to the top of the side panels, and then I connected the D-rings to the bottom of the back panel that would do the backpack conversion, as you can see here. And I did them at an angle so that it lays appropriately for the backpack. And I did them about 3/8 of an inch above the bottom of the back panel. And I also connected the D-ring underneath the flap on the back panel, just below the top, maybe an inch, that you'll feed the detachable strap through to create the backpack straps when you do the conversion. So I attached the outside pockets and all of the labels and things that I wanted. And then at this point, you're going to start connecting the panels together. Start with your back panel and connect to your two side panels with your pockets on there, connected to the panel, to the back panel, and then you're going to connect your bottom panel. Any piece where it meets the bottom panel, stop 1/4 of an inch from the edge and then backstitch really well. Also use a really short stitch length for the integrity of the bag. But you're going to want to stop 1/4 inch so that those 3 points where they meet together, there's room to connect them together where they're going to lay appropriately. So now you've connected your back panel to your side panels, and now you've attached your bottom panel, and then you'll connect your front panel to the bottom panel. So it should look like a big T, essentially. And now you're going to connect the side panels to the bottom panel, again, leaving 1/4 inch from the edge on each side for that corner to lay appropriately. And so now that you have all 5 pieces, it should look like a bag at this point. And here you can see where I attached that D-ring at that top there. But flip your bag right side out, and you're going to want to, or what I did is once it's flipped right side out, and I'll have a picture of that ahead of here, I pinched the seams together, and then along the bottom of the bag, I did a top stitch along that bottom seam to create a stiff seam at the bottom to hold the structure of the bag. And how you do this is you end up using a big needle, so an 18/110 needle. Go really slow and just be patient. But you pinch that outside panel together, or those two panels, so the bottom and the front, or the bottom and the sides, and then you sew really close to the edge, like 1/8 of an inch, and then you stop about 1/2 inch from the corners of the bag. That will save you a lot of trouble and a broken needle. And then that creates that stiff finishing seam on the outside of the bag. You can also do that at the top of the bag, or on the sides above the pocket, to create a little bit of structure at the top as well. And it makes it sit really, really nice. But so here's the picture of where I'm doing that stiff seam. You can see it's about 1/8 of an inch, and then you can see the stiff seam here that I've created, and I've pinched it tight so that you can see the seam actually popping through from the inside. And that's what creates is that extra structure for the bag there. And I did it all, like I said, all along the bottom panel, leaving a 1/2 inch from the corners just to save sanity. And again, you'll see it coming up here kind of on the side there. But next I created the pocket for the inside liner. If you haven't done this, I suggest you just YouTube a tutorial on it. I just match the size of my rectangle and where I want it to be to whatever zipper I have on hand. I believe this one was a 10-inch zipper that I used. And you sew your liner back panel to that panel where you want to create the pocket, and open that center, sew the zipper in. So now you're going to connect your liner pieces in the same order that you did your outside, but you're going to leave a 5-inch opening on one of those seams, preferably one of the side seams, to be able to birth your bag. Make sure you use a tight stitch length and back stitch at the opening and edge of that birthing the bag. At this point, you're going to flip the bag right side out, or you're going to put the bag that is right side out into your inside panel liner, or your liner, and pin it where the corners meet. So you want to make sure that it's lined. So again, you have your outside quilted panel inside your liner, right sides together, and then you top stitch around the edge. Once you're done with that, you're going to birth the bag, and gently through that 5-inch hole, lay it all in there, get it all straightened out. Once you've done that, you're going to top stitch, like seen here, around the top of the bag. Easiest way to do is to pinch it tight, use pins, and pin it down well in there so that it lays appropriately. You can see that it creates a nice top stitch at the top. And then at this point is where I did the magnetic closure for mine. So it does go through the liner on my bag, just because I didn't think about it anytime sooner. But you can do the magnetic closure before you sew it to the liner if you want, after the quilted panels are together, if you don't want to see that on the inside of the bag. You can also use Velcro, ribbons, things like that. And then you're going to create your long handle here, your detachable handle that you can either put at the top of the bag on the D-rings, or feed it through that back D-ring and connect it to the other bottoms to create the backpack portion. If you haven't seen how to make one of those, again, I would just YouTube a tutorial on how to make that strap. I used 2 claw clips on each end, as well as a slider clip. And then here's showing the bag, flipping it inside out. So it starts as a tote here. I have that top detachable strap that is adjustable. That's the top of each side panel. And then you can take that off and feed it through that D-ring in the back and connect it on the bottom to create the backpack. So I hope this helps. A couple tips. Again, use the fatter needles, the 18 gauge needles, the 18-110s, and go slow. I can sew these bags on my featherweight if I just take my time. So general domestic machines work just fine. And again, your top stitch length for your finishing stitch on the outside of the bags generally are 2.5 to 3. My piecing stitches are 1, generally, to keep that tight. But again, here you can see that I'm feeding it through that D-ring, connecting the pieces, and turning it into a backpack. So I will post a quick text right out too of the instructions, and to make sure I post the measurements for the 2 different bags. The large bag, I believe I started with a 19-inch square panels for front and back, and then the small bag I started with 16-inch panels front and back, because that's what I had on hand. So I hope this helps.